the Holy Gospel according to Matthew.
Glory
Glory
to
to the
you.
Lord. Jacob was the father of Joseph, the husband of Mary. Of her was born Jesus, who is called the Christ. Now this is how the birth of Jesus Christ came about. When his mother Mary was betrothed to Joseph, but before they lived together, she was found with child through the Holy Spirit. Joseph, her husband, since he was a righteous man, yet unwilling to expose her to shame, decided to divorce her quietly. Such was his intention when, behold, the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream and said, Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary your wife into your home, for it is through the Holy Spirit that this child has been conceived in her. She will bear a son, and you are to name him Jesus, because he will save people from their sins. When Joseph awoke, he did as the angel of the Lord had commanded him and took Mary into his home. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
John, will you check your couch and see if I threw the book on the couch with my hat?
Please be seated, everyone.
Sorry,
Is it in the back? Is it in the back?
I think it's on top of my
Check the
hat
back.
on the couch. It's okay, really, it's all right. It's all right. It's all right. Good morning, everybody, and happy St. Joseph's Day. We've had happier St. Joseph's Day. I know I want to acknowledge that right away, but Beth was looking for the book. It's okay. Joan, it's okay. It's okay. Don't worry about it. The first thing that we've been doing these St. Joseph's Days for a while, and the first thing that we always do is we acknowledge the commitment of our sisters of St. Joseph. It's their patronal feast day. And so many of us in Rochester and Monroe County have been so positively affected by their life and their mission. Their elementary schools, their high schools, their college, Nazareth, who a lot of us went to Nazareth. And also called to mind the courageous mission in Selma, Alabama, in treating those who were in the segregated hospital and could not go to the white hospital. In particular, the marchers across the Pettus Bridge, who many of whom, including Senator John Lewis, attribute them with saving their lives because they would have bled out under that segregated healthcare system. So, so in past years we've done sort of humorous homilies. We've done, we thought about Giotto's painting. I sort of looked over and listened to those homilies. They're very inappropriate for a day like today. But one personal story that I'll share about, the name of the story is Peter and Magdalene on the way to Nazareth. It's not in the Bible. Some of you know and some of you don't know that I've been in recovery for 32 years. My last drink was July 5th, 1987. And at the time that I was sort of bottoming out, or really bottoming out, I should say, a couple of people in my life were encouraging me to go to Nazareth to get certified to teach art to kids. One of them was my mother, who was giving me articles from the paper, all this stuff. Another one of them was Althea Conley, who a lot of you remember. And I think you don't remember that Althea was a very robust, energetic woman who was helping hundreds, if not thousands, of disabled people in Monroe County get to their appointments, living there independently in group homes, all these things. So they were both, I would say, angels in this journey, but when I got to Nazareth, it was probably sometime in August, and I don't remember the date. What I do remember, I don't know if some of you may have detoxed from alcoholism before, but for a long time afterward, you have hand tremors, and you sort of shake, and your system doesn't rid itself of these sort of reactions right away. So I was registering for the first of these courses at Nazareth, and I was very anxious and afraid. And I was in line because years ago, you'll remember that we didn't do our registration online. You stood in line and waited for these people to, if you were lucky, you were at the front of the line, you got into class. If not, you had to wait till the next semester, all that business. Well, it was kind of a hot day. I was sort of panicking, and I turned around and left the line. And all right. This nun followed me out, and I can't even really remember whether she called me young man or how she addressed me, but she said, "Are you all right?" And I said, "I'm okay. It's just a little hot in there, and I'll come back later, or I'll come back another day." And if you're a person who's ever struggled with addiction or alcoholism or any of these things, you know that part of our personality type is very fear-oriented. And I know today that if I had left the line, I may not have ever come back, So she said, "No, I'm gonna take you into my office and we'll just do it together, So she took me into her office. She ordered, with her, one thing she did do is she wrote certain courses that I had already taken in pen. And then she said, "We're gonna write these other courses that you will take in pencil." And I thought, oh my God, I don't know if I can do this. I've been with these nuns my whole life. But I said, all right, I'm gonna just give this a shot. So, sorry, my throat gets dry and my hands shake when I tell the truth. Anyhow, Sister Magdalene became my advisor and sort of my guardian angel at Nazareth. And not just mine. There are hundreds of people in Monroe County who were art majors at Nazareth, and fellow sisters and others who attribute her to being a life changer in their lives. So I went through this course at Nazareth, and I did my student teaching, and I was given my first job in City School District, and I was working at number 34 school over Lexington Avenue. And years ago, when all of us were still smoking, the kids would leave the schools, and the teacher, we would open the windows, and then when we were cleaning our classrooms up or whatever, we would smoke those much needed cigarettes, kind of at the windowsill, And so I was doing a project with kids. Sister Magdalene had breast cancer, and she was a phenomenal, vital person, but she was in remission for 10 years from breast cancer, and she threw herself this big party, and everybody was celebrating that, but she had a recurrence of this cancer. And she was put in the infirmary, and I really never had a final conversation with her. And I always wanted to go back and to sort of say, I have to thank you, because without your intervention, I may never have undertaken this mission. By then, she was in the infirmary and they were no longer letting students visit, so that wasn't an option. So fast forward, I'm in my classroom, I smoke a cigarette. I had done this project. Gannett used to do overruns of the newspaper, and when they did these overruns, they would donate these pallets of newspapers to the schools, and we would use them, projects with kids, whatever. So I had these stacks of newspapers in my classroom. And in the meantime, Magdalene had passed away, and I was working in my first year of teaching. So my kids were making all these little animals with paper mache. I know a lot of you did that as kids. You dip it in this goopy, horrible stuff, and they dry out, and all of a sudden you make these awesome sculptures of, whatever. So I had this big shelf in my classroom. My kids had made all these projects out of this stack of newspapers. I smoked a cigarette. By now, there's nobody left in the school building. And I look up at the shelf, and all of these projects were covered with pictures of Magdalene. And I just knew that she was there with me. Because what are the odds that those kids would have ripped up a stack of newspapers on the day that her obituary was featured, and that I would have been too busy to even focus on it at the time, and then later look at this beautiful stack of projects covered with Sister Magdalene's portrait. So, I know it doesn't have a lot to do with St. Joseph Day, but in a way it does, because Joseph in the gospel is associated with dreams. And he's getting a lot of information from these angels that are coming to him in these 4 dreams. The first one has to do with taking Mary as his wife. Then there's a dream to flee. Then there's a dream letting him know that it's safe to come home. On the way home, he has a dream advising him to change course. And all these things are given to him, these bits of knowledge, these warnings, directives are given to him in dreams from these angels. But I don't think it's much different than what's happening with us in our lives. And I look back in my life, and there are angels who gave me direction, who told me when it was time to stop doing something, who told me it's okay to return to something, who told me it's safe or unsafe, or change course. And she was one of mine, and I'm sure that every person in this room can think of, particularly when you were younger, a person who was that angel for you. Now that we're entering into this other chapter of our lives, most of us, we have opportunity to be that angel a lot of times for someone else. But we must follow our intuition and pray for knowledge of divine will. What is God's will for me? And I cannot direct my course or help you understand yours unless I'm taking time to listen to this knowledge. And I think we undervalue that in our culture. I think the things we've been trying to re-understand and focus on during Lent, different modes of prayer, taking time aside, all these things, these are opportunities for us to get tapped into that divine knowledge, that angelic knowledge, right? So One thing, I took courses long after this at the art gallery, and people at art history courses, a lot of people in Monroe County went to Europe with Magdalene over the years. And one thing they all reported that she always said when they were in these old churches, she always pointed up and said, "You got to keep your eye on those angels."
Amen.
Amen.